The silence of potential is often the loudest sound in our lives. We stand in front of the mirror, looking at a reflection that hasn't changed in years, and we wonder, why? We ask ourselves why the diet didn't stick, why the novel isn't written, why the bank account looks exactly the same as it did 3 years ago. We live in a world that is addicted to the dramatic transformation, the overnight success, the lightning strike of genius that changes everything in a single heartbeat. We watch movies where the hero transforms in a 3-minute montage, and we internalize a dangerous lie that success is about the one massive, earth-shattering action. We convince ourselves that massive success requires massive action. Whether it is losing weight, building a business, writing a book, or winning a championship, we put a tremendous amount of pressure on ourselves to make some earth-shattering improvement that everyone will talk about. We swing for the fences every single time, exhausting ourselves, burning out our willpower, and eventually collapsing back into the same old routines, defeated and cynical. We think, maybe I'm just not cut out for this. But what happens next changes everything you thought you knew about progress. Because the truth, the real, mathematical, undeniable truth of the universe, is that significant, life-altering change does not happen in the leap. It happens in the drift. It happens in the microscopic, invisible adjustments that are so small, so mundane, that if you told your friends about them, they would laugh. Let me take you back to 2003. The fate of British cycling was, quite frankly, pathetic. In the 110 years prior, no British cyclist had ever won the Tour de France. Their performance was so underwhelming that one of the top bike manufacturers in Europe actually refused to sell bikes to the team because they were afraid it would hurt their brand's reputation if other professionals saw the British team using their gear. That is how deep the hole was. And then they hired a man named Dave Brailsford. What Brailsford did next is the perfect illustration of the philosophy we are about to explore. He didn't fire everyone. He didn't demand a massive, terrifying overhaul of the entire program overnight. Instead, he introduced a concept he called the aggregation of marginal gains. It was the philosophy of searching for a tiny margin of improvement in everything you do. Brailsford said, the whole principle came from the idea that if you broke down everything you could think of that goes into riding a bike and then improve it by 1%, you will get a significant increase when you put them all together. They started with the obvious things. They redesigned the bike seats to make them more comfortable. They rubbed alcohol on the tires for a better grip. But then they went deeper. They looked into areas that no one else had ever considered. They tested different massage gels to see which one led to the fastest muscle recovery. They hired a surgeon to teach each rider the best way to wash their hands to reduce the chances of catching a cold. They determined the type of pillow and mattress that led to the best night's sleep for each rider. They even painted the inside of the team truck white, which helped them spot little bits of dust that would normally slip by unnoticed but could degrade the performance of the finely tuned bikes. To the outside world, these changes seemed laughable. A better pillow, hand-washing techniques, painted trucks. It seemed like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. But these hundreds of tiny improvements accumulated. They compounded. Within 5 years, the British cycling team dominated the road and track cycling events at the 2008 Olympic Games in Beijing, where they won an astounding 60% of all gold medals available. 4 years later, when the Olympics came to London, the Brits raised the bar as they set 9 Olympic records and 7 world records. And that same year, Bradley Wiggins became the first British cyclist to win the Tour de France. The next year, his teammate Chris Froome won the race, and he would go on to win again and again. From 2007 to 2017, British cyclists won 178 world championships and 66 Olympic or Paralympic gold medals, and captured 5 Tour de France victories, what is widely regarded as the most successful run in cycling history. How does this happen? How does a team of ordinary athletes transform into world champions with essentially the same riders and the same equipment? It happens because of the math of small habits. It is so easy to overestimate the importance of one defining moment, underestimate the value of making small improvements on a daily basis. Here is the math. If you can get just 1% better each day for 1 year, you'll end up 37 times better by the time you're done. Conversely, if you get 1% worse each day for 1 year, you'll decline nearly down to 0. What starts as a small win or a minor setback accumulates into something much more. Habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. The same way that money multiplies through compound interest, the effects of your habits multiply as you repeat them. They seem to make little difference on any given day, and yet the impact they deliver over the months and years can be enormous. It is only when looking back 2, 5, or perhaps 10 years later that the value of good habits and the cost of bad ones becomes strikingly apparent. But this is a difficult concept to appreciate in daily life. We make a few changes, but the results never seem to come quickly, and so we slide back into our previous routines. You go to the gym for 3 days in a row. You look in the mirror, and your body looks exactly the same. You study a new language for an hour tonight, and you still haven't learned the language. We make a few changes, but the results don't seem to show, so we stop. This is the trap. This is the plateau of latent potential. Imagine you have an ice cube sitting on the table in front of you. The room is cold, and you can see your breath. It is currently 25 degrees. Ever so slowly, the room begins to heat up. 26 degrees. 27. 28. The ice cube is still sitting on the table in front of you. 29 degrees. 30. 31. Still, nothing has happened. Then 32 degrees. The ice begins to melt. A 1-degree shift, seemingly no different from the temperature increases before it, has unlocked a huge change. Breakthrough moments are often the result of many previous actions, which build up the potential required to unleash a major change. This pattern shows up everywhere. Cancer spends 80% of its life undetectable, then takes over the body in months. Bamboo can barely be seen for the first 5 years as it builds extensive root systems underground before exploding 90 feet into the air within 6 weeks. Similarly, habits often appear to make no difference until you cross a critical threshold and unlock a new level of performance. In the early and middle stages of any quest, there is often a valley of disappointment. You expect to make progress in a linear fashion, and it's frustrating how ineffective changes can seem during the first days, weeks, and even months. It doesn't feel like you are going anywhere. It's a hallmark of any compounding process. The most powerful outcomes are delayed. This is one of the core reasons why it is so hard to build habits that last. People make a few small changes, fail to see a tangible result, and decide to stop. You think, "I've been running every day for a month. Why can't I see a change in my body?" Once this kind of thinking takes over, it's easy to let good habits fall by the wayside. But in order to make a meaningful difference, habits need to persist long enough to break through this plateau, what I call the plateau of latent potential. If you find yourself struggling to build a good habit or break a bad one, it is not because you have lost your ability to improve. It is often because you have not yet crossed the plateau of latent potential. Complaining about not achieving success, despite working hard, is like complaining about an ice cube not melting when you heated it from 25 to 31 degrees. Your work was not wasted. It is just being stored. All the action happens at 32 degrees. And here is where we must fundamentally shift our perspective on how we approach life. For decades, we have been told that the key to success is setting goals. We are told to reach for the stars, to visualize the end result. But the results have very little to do with the goals you set, and nearly everything to do with the systems you follow. Consider a room full of Olympians. Every single athlete at the Olympic Games has the same goal: to win the gold medal. Every candidate applying for a job has the same goal: to get hired. If successful and unsuccessful people share the same goals, then the goal cannot be what differentiates the winners from the losers. It wasn't the goal of winning the Tour de France that propelled the British cyclists to the top of the sport. Presumably, they had wanted to win the race every year before, just like every other professional team. The goal had always been there. It was only when they implemented a system of continuous small improvements that they achieved a different outcome. Achieving a goal is only a momentary change. Imagine you have a messy room and you set a goal to clean it. If you summon the energy to tidy up, then you will have a clean room for now. But if you maintain the same sloppy, pack-rat habits that led to a messy room in the first place, soon you'll be looking at a new pile of clutter and hoping for another burst of motivation. You're left chasing the same outcome because you never changed the system behind it. You treated a symptom without addressing the cause. Goals are about the results you want to achieve. Systems are about the processes that lead to those results. If you're a musician, your goal is to play a new piece. Your system is how often you practice, how you break down and tackle difficult measures, and your method for receiving feedback from your instructor. If you're an entrepreneur, your goal might be to build a $1 million business. Your system is how you test product ideas, hire employees, and run marketing campaigns. The purpose of setting goals is to win the game. The purpose of building systems is to continue playing the game. True long-term thinking is goalless thinking. It's not about any single accomplishment. It is about the cycle of endless refinement and continuous improvement. Ultimately, it is your commitment to the process that will determine your progress. But there is a layer even deeper than systems. There is a core to your behavior that dictates everything you do, a layer that most people ignore completely. This is the layer of identity. Changing our habits is challenging for two reasons. One, we try to change the wrong thing. And two, we try to change our habits in the wrong way. Imagine two people resisting a cigarette. When offered a smoke, the first person says, "No thanks. I'm trying to quit." It sounds like a reasonable response, but this person still believes they are a smoker who is trying to be something else. They are hoping their behavior will change while carrying around the same beliefs. The second person declines by saying, "No thanks. I'm not a smoker." It's a small difference, but this statement signals a shift in identity. Smoking was part of their former life, not their current one. They no longer identify as someone who smokes. Most people don't even consider identity change when they set out to improve. They just think, "I want to be skinny, outcome, and if I stick to this diet, then I'll be skinny, process." They set goals and determine the actions to achieve those goals without considering the beliefs that drive their actions. They never shift the way they look at themselves, and they don't realize that their old identity can sabotage their new plans for change. True behavior change is identity change. You might start a habit because of motivation, but the only reason you'll stick with one is that it becomes part of your identity. Anyone can convince themselves to visit the gym or eat healthy once or twice. But if you don't shift the belief behind the behavior, then it is hard to stick with long-term changes. Improvements are only temporary until they become part of who you are. The goal is not to read a book. The goal is to become a reader. The goal is not to run a marathon. The goal is to become a runner. The goal is not to learn an instrument. The goal is to become a musician. Your behaviors are usually a reflection of your identity. What you do is an indication of the type of person you believe that you are, either consciously or non-consciously. Research has shown that once a person believes in a particular aspect of their identity, they are more likely to act in alignment with that belief. So, how do you change your identity? It's a simple two-step process. Decide the type of person you want to be. Prove it to yourself with small wins. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. No single instance will transform your beliefs, but as the votes build up, so does the evidence of your new identity. This is why atomic habits are so powerful. They are not just about getting results. They are about changing who you are. They are the channel through which you develop your deepest beliefs about yourself. You are not born with a preset identity. You are becoming someone new every moment, and the tool you use to sculpt this new person is the habit loop. Every habit you have, good or bad, follows the same four-step pattern. This is the operating system of the human brain. First, there is the cue. The cue triggers your brain to initiate a behavior. It is a bit of information that predicts a reward. Second is the craving. This is the motivational force behind every habit. Without some level of motivation or desire, without craving a change, we have no reason to act. Third is the response. This is the actual habit you perform, which can take the form of a thought or an action. And finally, the reward. The reward is the end goal of every habit. The cue is about noticing the reward. The craving is about wanting the reward. The response is about obtaining the reward. We chase rewards because they serve two purposes. One, they satisfy us, and two, they teach us. This four-step process, cue, craving, response, reward, allows us to create the 4 laws of behavior change. If we want to build a good habit, we must make it obvious, make it attractive, make it easy, make it satisfying. And if we want to break a bad habit, we simply invert them. Make it invisible. Make it unattractive. Make it difficult. Make it unsatisfying. Let's begin where it all starts. The first law. Make it obvious. The human brain is a prediction machine. It is continuously taking in your surroundings and analyzing the information it encounters. Whenever you experience something repeatedly, like a nurse seeing the face of a patient having a heart attack, or a military analyst seeing a blip on a radar screen, your brain begins to notice what is important, sorting through the details, highlighting the relevant cues, and cataloging that information for future use. But over time, our habits become so automatic that we stop paying attention to what we are doing. We fall into a trance. We check our phones without thinking. We eat the cookie on the counter without realizing we were hungry. This is why the first step to changing your habits is simply to become aware of them. You cannot change what you do not measure. One of the most effective ways to do this is a strategy used by the Japanese railway system called pointing and calling. In Tokyo, if you watch a train conductor, you will see a peculiar ritual. When the train approaches a signal, the operator points at it and says, "Signal is green." When the train pulls into and out of each station, the operator points at the speedometer and calls out the exact speed. When it's time to leave, the conductor points at the timetable and states the time. Out on the platform, other employees are pointing at the edge of the platform and declaring "all clear." To an outsider, it looks but this system, pointing and calling, reduces errors by up to 85% and cuts accidents by 30%. Why? Because it raises the level of awareness from a non-conscious habit to a conscious one. It forces the operator to use their eyes, hands, mouth, and ears to engage with the task. We can adapt this for our own lives. We need to point and call our own habits to bring them out of the shadows. But once we are aware, we need a plan. The most common mistake people make is lacking clarity. They say, "I want to work out more," but they don't say when, and they don't say where. They leave it up to chance. They leave it up to how they feel later in the day. And usually, they feel tired. We can solve this with a simple formula called an implementation intention. Hundreds of studies have shown that people who make a specific plan for when and where they will perform a new habit are more likely to follow through. The formula is, I will behavior at time in location. Don't say I will read more. Say I will read Spanish for 20 minutes at 6 p.m. in my bedroom. Don't say I will exercise. Say I will exercise for 1 hour at 5 p.m. at my local gym. This creates a concrete cue. The time and location become the trigger. There is no decision to be made. When the clock strikes 6 p.m., the question isn't "do I feel like reading?" The question is already answered. But we can take this even further. We can use the momentum of our existing life to build our new life. This is called habit stacking. The French philosopher Denis Diderot once lived a humble life, until one day he acquired a beautiful scarlet robe. It was gorgeous, but there was a problem. The robe was so beautiful that he noticed how shabby the rest of his possessions were. His rug looked dirty next to the robe, so he bought a new rug. His chair looked old, so he bought a new chair. One purchase led to the next in a chain reaction of consumption. This is the Diderot effect. We can use this chain reaction for good. We can use habit stacking. The formula is, after I current habit, I will new habit. Your current habits are already hardwired into your brain. You brush your teeth. You pour coffee. You sit down at your desk. These are strong, reliable cues. So you attach the new habit to the old one. After I pour my morning coffee, I will meditate for 1 minute. After I take off my work shoes, I will immediately change into my workout clothes. By stacking the new behavior on top of the old one, you don't need to summon new willpower. You just need to follow the script you've written for yourself. However, even the best plans can fail if your environment is fighting against you. We like to think we are masters of our destiny, but often we are simply victims of our environment. In 1971, during the Vietnam War, congressmen were horrified to learn that over 15% of US soldiers stationed there were heroin addicts. They panicked. They expected that when these soldiers came home, the US would have a massive drug crisis on its hands. But a strange thing happened. When the soldiers returned to the US, 90% of them stopped using heroin overnight. They didn't need rehab. They didn't have withdrawal. They just stopped. Why? Because in Vietnam, the environment triggered the habit. The stress of war, the easy access to heroin, the camaraderie of other users, all the cues were there. When they came home to a clean suburban house with no war, no heroin dealers, and different friends, the cues were gone. The habit evaporated because the environment changed. This leads us to the most practical application of the first law: design your environment for success. If you want to drink more water, place water bottles in every room. If you want to practice guitar, buy a stand and put it in the middle of the living room. If you want to eat healthier, put the apples in a bowl on the counter, not in the crisper drawer where they rot unseen. Conversely, if you want to break a bad habit, you must make it invisible. If you can't stop checking your phone, leave it in another room. If you waste money on online shopping, unsubscribe from the emails. Self-control is a short-term strategy, not a long-term one. You may be able to resist temptation once or twice, but you're unlikely to muster the willpower to override your desires every time. Instead of summoning a new dose of willpower whenever you want to, do the right thing. Spend your energy optimizing the environment. This is the secret to making the first law work for you. But seeing the habit is only the beginning. Once we notice the cue, we must want to take action. The spark must become a fire. And to do that, we must understand the chemistry of desire. We must move to the second law. And the fuel for that fire, the chemical architect of our desires, is a molecule you have certainly heard of, but perhaps misunderstood: dopamine. For years, scientists believed dopamine was all about pleasure. They thought it was the chemical reward you got after you ate the cookie or won the bet. But the truth is far more interesting and far more critical to understanding why we do what we do. Dopamine is not just about the destination. It is about the chase. It is the chemical of anticipation. When you see that notification pop up on your phone, your brain releases a massive spike of dopamine before you even click it. It is the anticipation of the message, the potential of the reward, that drives you to act. The brain has far more neural circuitry allocated for wanting rewards than for liking them. This makes evolutionary sense. If you didn't have a burning desire to hunt or gather, you wouldn't survive long enough to enjoy the meal. We are wired to crave. But in the modern world, this ancient wiring is being hijacked. We are surrounded by what scientists call supernormal stimuli. A wild apple is sweet, but a candy bar is explosively sweet. A cave painting is interesting, but an Instagram feed is an infinite, scrolling waterfall of novelty, color, and social validation. These supernormal stimuli light up our dopamine receptors like a Christmas tree, creating cravings so powerful they override our better judgment. We are cavemen, living in a chocolate factory. So, how do we fight back? How do we use this biology to build good habits instead of falling prey to bad ones? We must engineer the craving. We must use the second law of behavior change, make it attractive. One of the most brilliant ways to do this is a strategy called temptation bundling. It sounds technical, but it's actually a way of hacking your own psychology. It works by linking an action you want to do with an action you need to do. Consider the story of Ronan Byrne, an electrical engineering student in Dublin. Ronan knew he needed to exercise more, but like many of us, he lacked the motivation. However, he absolutely loved watching Netflix. Being an engineer, he didn't just use willpower, he built a system. He hacked his stationary bike and connected it to his laptop and his TV. He wrote a computer program that would allow Netflix to run only if he was cycling at a certain speed. If he slowed down for too long, whatever show he was watching would pause until he started pedaling again. He was bundling the temptation, watching House of Cards, with the habit he needed to build, exercise. He transformed the workout from a chore into the ticket to his entertainment. You can do this too. You can tell yourself, I am only allowed to listen to my favorite true crime podcast while I am folding laundry. Or I can only check Instagram after I have done 3 minutes of deep breathing. By bundling the two, you transfer the dopamine spike from the reward to the task itself. But there is a force even more powerful than our own individual biology. We are social animals. We don't just make decisions based on what we want. We make decisions based on what others do. We are deeply, instinctively driven to fit in, to belong to the tribe. And this brings us to the social aspect of the second law, the influence of the close, the many, and the powerful. We imitate the close, our family and friends. If your best friend is a smoker, you are significantly more likely to smoke. If your spouse eats healthy, you are more likely to eat healthy. We imitate the many, the crowd. When we are unsure how to act, we look to the majority. This is why we check Amazon reviews before buying a toaster, and we imitate the powerful, those with status and prestige. We mimic the habits of successful people because we desire their success. The most effective thing you can do to make a habit attractive is 2. Join a culture where your desired behavior is the normal behavior. Let me tell you the story of Laszlo Polgar. Laszlo was an educational psychologist in Hungary who believed that geniuses were not born, they were made. He claimed he could turn any child into a prodigy simply by designing the right environment. He decided to test this theory with his own children. 3 daughters named Susan, Sophia, and Judith. His chosen field was chess. The Polgar home was not a normal house, it was a shrine to the game. The walls were lined with books on chess strategy. The girls played constantly. They analyzed grandmaster games. They lived and breathed chess. To the outside world, this might have seemed intense, perhaps even isolating. But to Susan, Sophia, and Judith, it was simply normal. Everyone they knew, everyone in their tribe, played chess. The results were staggering. Susan became a grandmaster. Sophia became an international master. And Judith became the greatest female chess player of all time, defeating multiple world champions. The lesson here is not that you need to turn your home into a chess academy. The lesson is that if you want to be a reader, join a book club. If you want to run, join a running group. When you join a group where your desired habit is the standard, the friction of change evaporates. You aren't fighting the current, you are the current. The shared identity of the group reinforces your personal identity. It becomes attractive to stick to the habit because it signals to the tribe, I am one of you. But what if the habit you want to break is the one that feels good? What if you want to stop the bad habit? We must invert the law, make it unattractive. We have to reframe the narrative in our heads. Most of us view our bad habits as stress relief. I need a cigarette to relax. I need this burger to feel better. But this is a surface-level lie. You don't need the cigarette. You need a way to deep breathe and take a break. You don't need the burger. You need comfort. You must highlight the benefits of avoiding the bad habit. Instead of telling yourself, I can't drink tonight, which feels like a deprivation, tell yourself, I get to wake up tomorrow with a clear head and full energy. Instead of saying, I have to go run, say, I get to build endurance and become faster. Shift your mindset from have to get to. It sounds simple, almost too simple, but it changes the emotional signature of the habit. You are no longer sacrificing, you are seizing an opportunity. Now, imagine you have made the cues obvious. You have made the habit attractive. You are ready to go. But there is still a massive wall standing between you and progress. That wall is the sheer difficulty of taking action. We often spend so much time plotting and strategizing that we never actually start. This brings us to the critical distinction between motion and action. Motion is planning. It's researching the best diet plan. It's organizing your desk. It's reading books about writing. Motion feels like progress. It feels like you're doing something, but in reality, You are just preparing to get something done. Action is the behavior that delivers an outcome. Action is eating the healthy meal. Action is writing the sentence. Action is doing the squat. Why do we get stuck in motion? Because motion allows us to feel like we're making progress without running the risk of failure. You can't fail at researching a book. You can only fail at writing one. So we hide in motion. It is a form of procrastination that makes us feel productive. But you cannot plan your way to success. You must act. And to act, we need the third law of behavior change: make it easy. There is a fascinating story about a photography professor at the University of Florida named Jerry Ullsman. On the first day of class, he divided his students into two groups. To the left side of the room, he said, "You are the quantity group. Your grade will be based solely on the amount of work you produce. If you submit 100 photos, you get an A 90 photos, a B 80 photos, a C." To the right side of the room, he said, "You are the quality group. You only need to produce one photo during the semester, but it must be nearly perfect. You will be graded only on the excellence of that single image." The semester went by. The quantity group was busy running around, experimenting, testing lighting, making mistakes, and shooting rolls and rolls of film. The quality group sat in the classroom, speculating about composition, arguing about theory, and agonizing over perfection. At the end of the term, a surprising thing happened. The best photos, the absolute masterpieces, all came from the quantity group. Why? Because while the quality group was busy theorizing about perfection, the quantity group was busy practicing. They were honing their skills through the sheer volume of trial and error. By doing the work, they learned. The lesson is clear. The most effective form of learning is practice, not planning. We get so hung up on figuring out the best approach that we never get around to taking action. We want the perfect diet, the perfect workout, the perfect business idea. But the best is the enemy of the good. We need to stop worrying about how long it takes to build a habit. People always ask, how many days does it take to form a habit? Is it 21 days? 66 days? This is the wrong question. The real question is, how many repetitions does it take? Habits are not formed by time. They are formed by frequency. You could do something twice in 30 days, or 200 times. The frequency makes the difference. Each time you repeat an action, you are physically altering the structure of your brain. This is called long-term potentiation. Neurons that fire together, wire together. The more you do it, the easier it becomes. So if repetition is the key, our goal should be to make repetition as easy as possible. We must reduce the friction. Human behavior follows the law of least effort. We are naturally gravitating toward the option that requires the least amount of work. This isn't because we are lazy, it's because we are biologically efficient. Our brains want to conserve energy. If a habit is hard, If the gym is 20 minutes away, if the guitar is in the case, if the healthy food requires an hour of cooking, we won't do it. We must become designers of our world. We need to decrease the friction associated with good habits and increase the friction associated with bad habits. In the late 1970s, the Japanese electronics boom was in full swing. Factories were churning out goods, but efficiency was key. They introduced a concept called lean production. The idea was to remove every unmatched tool, every unnecessary step, every bit of wasted motion from the factory floor. They redesigned the workspace so the workers didn't have to twist and turn to grab a tool. It was right there. We need to apply lean production to our lives. Want to exercise in the morning? Set out your workout clothes, shoes and water bottle the night before. Put them right in your path. You are removing the friction of finding your gear in the sleepy morning haze. Want to eat healthier? Chop the vegetables on Sunday and put them in clear containers at eye level in the fridge. You are removing the friction of prep time on a busy Tuesday night. Want to stop watching TV? Take the batteries out of the remote. Move the TV into a closet. You are adding friction. The greater the friction, the less likely the habit. The lower the friction, the more likely the habit. We want the good habits to slide downhill effortlessly. But even with a perfect environment, the hardest part is often just starting. The first step feels like the heaviest. This brings us to a powerful little tool called the 2-minute rule. The rule is simple. When you start a new habit, it should take less than 2 minutes to do. Read before bed. Each night becomes read 1 page. Do 30 minutes of yoga becomes take out my yoga mat. Study for class becomes open my notes. Fold the laundry becomes fold 1 pair of socks. You might be thinking, this sounds ridiculous. What is the point of reading 1 page? I want to read a whole book. But the point is not the 1 page. The point is to master the art of showing up. A habit must be established before it can be improved. You cannot optimize a habit that doesn't exist. If you can't learn the basic skill of showing up, you have no hope of mastering the finer details. The 2-minute rule is about creating a gateway habit. Think about the ritual of Twyla Tharp, one of the greatest choreographers of the modern era. She exercises for 2 hours every single morning. But she says her habit is not the exercise. Her habit is the cab ride. She wakes up at 5:30 a.m., puts on her workout gear, walks out of her Manhattan apartment, and hails a taxi. She tells the driver to go to the pumping iron gym. The moment the door closes, the ritual is complete. The workout is hard. But the habit, the cab ride, is easy. It takes less than 2 minutes. But once she is in the cab, she is committed. She has crossed the threshold. We all have these decisive moments in our day. The moment you walk in the door from work, do you change into pajamas or workout clothes? The moment the alarm goes off, do you hit snooze or put your feet on the floor? These tiny 2-minute choices determine how the next few hours unfold. By scaling the habit down to the first 2 minutes, you overcome the paralysis of the big task. Once you've read that one page, it's much easier to read the second. Once you've folded that one pair of socks, you might as well finish the pile. You are breaking the inertia. Now, imagine we have reduced the friction. We have made it easy. We have started small, but there is one final critical piece of the puzzle. We can get ourselves to do something once, maybe twice. But what makes us stick with it forever? What makes a habit truly addictive in a positive way? We need to feel successful. We need to feel that our effort paid off. We need to close the loop. We must move to the fourth law of behavior change, make it satisfying. And this is often where we fail, because of a fundamental disconnect between how our brains are wired and how the modern world works. We are walking around with Paleolithic hardware in a digital age. You see, for hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived in what scientists call an immediate return environment. If you were a prehistoric human and you felt hungry, you went foraging. You found berries, you ate them, problem solved, immediate reward. If a storm was coming, you found a cave, shelter found, immediate relief. Almost everything our ancestors did had an instant payoff. They didn't think about retirement plans or 5-year career goals. They lived in the now, but today we live in a delayed return environment. You go to work today, but you get the paycheck in 2 weeks. You go to the gym today, but you don't lose the weight for months. You study now, but the degree comes in 4 years. The link between your action and the reward is broken, or at least stretched very thin. This causes a massive conflict in the human brain. We value the present more than the future. A reward that is certain right now is worth far more to our animal brain than a reward that is merely possible in the future. This is why we smoke. The relief from stress is instant. The lung cancer is 20 years away. This is why we overeat. The taste of the sugar is right now. The obesity is a future problem. The cost of your good habits is in the present. The cost of your bad habits is in the future. So to stick with good habits, we have to find a way to add a little bit of immediate pleasure to the long-term sacrifice. We have to trick our ancient brain. We need to make it satisfying right now. One simple way to do this is to use reinforcement. Let's say you want to stop buying expensive coffee so you can save for a vacation. The reward of going to Europe next year is too far away to keep you motivated on a gloomy Tuesday morning when you really want a latte. But what if you opened a savings account labeled Trip to Europe? Every time you skip the coffee, you immediately transfer that $5 into the account. You see the number go up. Ding, that small spike of satisfaction, that visual proof of progress, provides the immediate reward you need to close the loop. You aren't just depriving yourself, you are paying yourself. This visual evidence is crucial, and there is no tool more powerful for visual satisfaction than a habit tracker. It's a simple concept. You get a calendar or a journal, and every day you complete your habit. You mark on 10th Monday. I wrote 500 words. 10th Tuesday. I wrote 500 words. 10th Wednesday. I wrote 500 words. 10th, after a few days, you have a chain. And suddenly, your goal shifts. It's not just about writing anymore. It's about not breaking the chain. The tracker makes the habit obvious. You see the calendar. It makes it attractive. You want to keep the streak alive. And, most importantly, it makes it satisfying. It feels good to draw that X. It provides proof that you are moving forward. But here is a warning, and a lesson that separates the amateurs from the pros. Life will happen. You will get sick. You will have a family emergency. You will break the chain. The perfectionist looks at the broken chain, feels like a failure, and quits. I ruined my streak, they say. I might as well give up. But the pro knows the most important rule of habit recovery. Never miss twice. If you miss one day, try to get back on track as quickly as possible. Missing one workout doesn't destroy your fitness. Missing one healthy meal doesn't make you overweight. It's the second mistake that kills you. The first mistake is just an error. The second mistake is the start of a new negative habit. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be consistent. The person who works out on the days they don't feel like it is the person who earns the results. This is the secret of the fourth law. We must align our short-term rewards with our long-term goals. We must find joy in the process, not just the outcome. And as we begin to master these four laws, making it obvious, attractive, easy, and satisfying, we start to see a shift. We stop fighting ourselves. The habits become automatic. But there is a danger in automation. There is a shadow side to habits that we rarely discuss. When a habit becomes automatic, we stop paying attention. We stop improving. We settle into good enough, and this brings us to the final frontier of mastery. How do we go from being merely good to being truly great? How do we prevent our habits from becoming stale? The answer lies in a specific combination of habits and deliberate practice, and understanding the delicate balance between talent and hard work. The ancient debate rages on. Is it nature or nurture? Is it your genes or your environment? We love to believe in the blank slate, the idea that anyone can become anything if they just work hard enough. It's a romantic notion. It tells us that we are all equal at the starting line. But if you look at the pinnacle of human performance, you see a different story, one that we often ignore because it feels unfair. Consider Michael Phelps. He is widely regarded as the greatest swimmer in history. Now consider Hisham El Garou, one of the greatest middle-distance runners of all time. They are both gold medalists. They are both champions. But if you stood them side by side, you would see a striking contradiction. Phelps is 6'4". El Garou is 5'9". Yet incredibly, they wear the same length inseam on their pants. How is that possible? Because they are built for completely different worlds. Phelps has a massive, elongated torso and relatively short legs. He is built like a canoe paddle, designed to pull through the water with terrifying efficiency. El Gurouge is the opposite. He has incredibly long legs and a short upper body. He is built like a gazelle, designed for stride and speed on land. If Michael Phelps had tried to become an Olympic runner, no amount of atomic habits, no amount of discipline, and no amount of 1% improvements would have made him a gold medalist. His biology would have fought him every step of the way. And if El Gurouge had tried to swim, his long legs would have dragged behind him like an anchor. This brings us to a hard but liberating truth. Genes do not determine your destiny. They determine your areas of opportunity. Habits are easier when they align with your natural abilities. Choose the right habit, and progress feels easy. Choose the wrong habit, and life is a struggle. We cannot change our DNA, but we can change the game we play. The secret to maximizing your odds of success is to choose a field of competition where the odds are in your favor. But how do you find that field? How do you know if you are a swimmer or a runner, an artist or an analyst? You have to employ a strategy known as explore, exploit. In the beginning, when you are young or just starting a new journey, you must explore. You must cast a wide net. Try everything. Write a poem, code a website, lift weights, run, paint. You are gathering data on yourself. You are asking, what feels like fun to me, but looks like work to others? This is the golden question. When you are doing something that feels like play, but others marvel at your discipline, you have found your lane. The professional musician practices for 8 hours, not because they have superhuman willpower, but because they get lost in the music. The code just flows for the programmer. Once you find that area where you have a natural tailwind, you shift from exploring to exploiting. You double down. You apply the 1% rule relentlessly. You build the systems we discussed in the earlier sections. You don't waste time trying to strengthen your weaknesses. If those weaknesses aren't necessary for your success, you sharpen your strengths until they are so sharp they cut through the competition. And if you can't find a game where the odds are in your favor, create one. When I started writing, I knew I wasn't the best academic researcher. There were people with PhDs who were smarter than me. I also knew I wasn't the most entertaining storyteller. There were journalists who were funnier than me. So I created a new category. I combined the two. I became the guy who writes about academic research with the flair of a storyteller. I redefined the game so I could win it. But finding your game is only the first step. Once you're on the right path, you face a new enemy. It is not lack of talent. It is not lack of ability. It is the silent killer of all long-term persistence, boredom. We assume that high achievers are fueled by passion. We imagine them waking up every day, eyes burning with fire, ready to conquer the world. But if you talk to the best in the world, if you really sit down with them in the quiet moments, they will tell you the truth. They get bored too. The weightlifter gets tired of lifting the same barbell. The writer gets tired of staring at the blinking cursor. The accountant gets tired of the spreadsheets. The difference, the only difference, is that the amateur lets the boredom stop them. The professional lets the boredom pass and does the work anyway. This brings us to the Goldilocks rule. Imagine you are playing tennis. If you play against a 4-year-old child, you will become bored immediately. The challenge is too low. You win every point without trying. Now imagine you play against Roger Federer or Serena Williams. You will become discouraged immediately. The challenge is too high. You lose every point, no matter how hard you try. But if you play against someone who is your equal, someone just slightly better than you are engaged. You win some. You lose some. You have to focus. You are right on the edge of your ability. This is the sweet spot. This is the Goldilocks zone. To maintain motivation over the long haul, you must work on tasks that are just manageable difficulties. If your habits are too easy, you get bored. If they are too hard, you give up. You need to design your life so that you are constantly pushing just beyond your current capacity. This state of balanced challenge creates flow. It's that magical mental state where the world falls away, time distorts, and you are fully immersed in the task at hand. Flow is the highest form of motivation. And flow only happens when the challenge matches the skill. But here is the catch. Even when you are in the Goldilocks zone, even when you have found your game, you will eventually reach a point where the novelty wears off. The habit becomes automatic, and this is dangerous. We think that when a habit becomes automatic, we have won. We think we have reached the mountaintop. But in reality, we have just reached the beginning of the slide into complacency. The upside of habits is that we can do things without thinking. The downside of habits is that we stop paying attention to little errors. You assume you're getting better because you're gaining experience. In reality, you are merely reinforcing your current habits, not improving them. In fact, some research suggests that once a skill becomes automatic, you usually decline slightly over time because you stop critiquing yourself. You glide on autopilot. This is why you can drive a car for 20 years and not become a Formula One driver. You are just repeating the same level of good enough driving day after day. To become great, to achieve true mastery, you need a different formula. Habits plus deliberate practice equal to mastery. You need the habit to automate the basics, to free up your mental energy. But then you must use that freed up energy to focus on the next level of detail. A chess master doesn't have to think about how the knight moves. That is a habit. They use their brain power to strategize 3 moves ahead. A surgeon doesn't have to think about how to hold the scalpel. That is a habit. They focus on the nuance of the incision. But you must be careful, because as you master a skill, as you build these ironclad habits and identities, you face one final subtle trap. It is the trap of a rigid identity. In the beginning, building an identity, I am a runner, I am a CEO, I am a soldier, is powerful. It gets you to show up. But if you hold that identity too tightly, it can become a prison. I had a friend who identified as an athlete. It was who he was. Then he tore his ACL. He couldn't run. He couldn't lift. And because his entire sense of self was wrapped up in that one word, athlete, he didn't just lose a hobby, he lost himself. He fell into a deep depression. The more you let a single belief define you, the less capable you are of adapting when life challenges you. Life will challenge you. The solution is to keep your identity small and flexible. Don't say, I am a CEO. Say, I am the type of person who builds and creates things. If your company fails, you are still a builder. You can build something else. Don't say, I am a soldier. Say, I am the type of person who is disciplined and protects others. When you leave the military, you can still be disciplined and protective as a parent, a teacher, or a leader. You must be like water, strong but fluid. Your habits should give you a backbone, not a straitjacket. And as we look back at this journey, from the tiny 1% changes, through the valley of disappointment, hacking the dopamine, reducing the friction, and finally mastering the craft, we begin to see the grand architecture of human potential. We realize that the holy grail of change is not a single breakthrough, but a lifestyle. But there is one final perspective we must consider. A perspective that ties it all together and explains why, despite knowing all of this, we still sometimes fail, and how to ensure that this time is different. To understand this, we must zoom out. We must look at the summaries paradox. It sounds like an ancient riddle found on a crumbling scroll, but it is actually a mirror held up to our modern lives. It asks a question that haunts us all. At what precise moment does a pile of coins become wealth? If I give you 1 coin, you are not rich. If I give you 10 coins, you are not rich. If I give you 1,000 coins, you might still not be rich. But if I keep adding 1 coin at a time, eventually, undeniably, you will be rich. But here is the paradox. No single coin did it. There was no magical tipping point coin that transformed you from poor to wealthy. It was the accumulation. It was the process. This paradox explains why we so often fail to see the truth of our own lives. We look for the defining moment. We look for the coin that will solve everything. The lottery win, the viral video, the perfect diet plan. We ignore the slow, boring accumulation of the coins we do have control over. We undervalue the single workout. We dismiss the single page of reading. We scoff at the single healthy meal. We say, this doesn't matter. It's just 1 coin. But the summaries paradox teaches us that the 1 coin is the only thing that matters. Because without the first coin, and the second, and the 1,000th, the pile never exists. To understand the patience required for this, we must look to the wisdom of the stonecutter. There is a famous quote by social reformer Jacob Riis that hangs on the walls of locker rooms and offices all over the world. It says, "When nothing seems to help, I go and look at a stonecutter hammering away at his rock, perhaps 100 times, without as much as a crack showing in it. Yet at the 101st blow, it will split in two, and I know it was not that last blow that did it, but all that had gone before. The world only sees the stone split. They only see the 101st blow. They see the weight loss photo on Instagram. They see the IPO of the company. They see the bestseller list, and they say, wow, look how fast that happened. Look at that overnight success. They are blind to the 100 blows that left no crack. They are blind to the plateau of latent potential. If you are currently hitting the rock and seeing no crack, you are not failing. You are storing energy. You are a stonecutter in the middle of the process. The crack is coming. But it will only come if you do not drop the hammer. But what happens after the rock splits? What happens after you reach the goal? This is where most people slide back into chaos. This is the dark side of goal-oriented thinking. We have been conditioned to treat life like a finite game. A game with a start, a finish, and a winner. We think, once I run the marathon, I'll be fit. Once I write the novel, I'll be a writer. Once I hit $1 million, I'll be successful. The problem with this mindset is what happens the day after the achievement. I have seen runners train for months for a marathon. They are disciplined. They eat right. They run every day. They cross the finish line. They get the medal. They post the photo. And then they stop running. For months, they gained the outcome. But they lost the system. They treated the habit as a toll booth they had to pay to get to the destination. And once they arrived, they stopped paying. This is why so many people yo-yo diet. They view the diet as a temporary suffering to reach a target weight. Once the target is hit, the diet is over, and the old habits return. The weight comes back. True atomic habits are not about crossing a finish line. They are about playing an infinite game. In a finite game, the goal is to win. In an infinite game, the goal is to keep playing. Health is not a game you win. It is a game you play. You don't win at being a parent. You don't win at creativity. You simply continue to engage with it. The purpose of the habit is not to get the medal. The purpose of the habit is to remain the type of person who could win the medal over and over again. When you shift from goals to systems, you solve the problem of happiness. In the goal-first mentality, you are constantly putting off happiness until the next milestone. I'll be happy when I lose 10 pounds. You are teaching yourself that your current state is not good enough. You are living in a permanent state of not yet. But in the system-first mentality, you can be happy right now. If your goal is to write a book, you are miserable until it's done. If your system is to write 500 words a day, then the moment you write that 500th word this morning, you have succeeded. You get a hit of dopamine today. You don't have to wait. You are winning every single day that you work your system. But let's be real. Even with the best systems, even with the strongest identity, you will stumble. You are human. The baby will get sick. The car will break down. You will have a week where you just don't care. The entropy of the universe will conspire against your habits. How you recover from these moments is the single greatest determinant of your long-term success. This brings us to a critical advanced tactic, the art of the bad workout. The amateur believes that if they can't do it perfectly, they shouldn't do it at all. I only have 20 minutes, not my usual hour, so it's not worth going to the gym. I ate a donut for breakfast, so the diet is ruined. I might as well eat pizza for dinner. This is the all-or-nothing fallacy, and it destroys more dreams than lack of talent ever could. The professional understands a different math. The professional knows that a 0 is infinitely worse than a 50%. If you have a day where you feel terrible, where you are tired, where you are stressed, go to the gym for 5 minutes. Do 10 jumping jacks. Read 1 page. Why? Because you are not there to improve your body that day. You are there to preserve your identity. The cumulative impact of a bad workout on your muscles is negligible. But the cumulative impact of skipping a workout on your mind is massive. It casts a vote for I am the kind of person who quits when things get busy. By showing up, even for 5 minutes, you reinforce the identity, I am the kind of person who doesn't miss. This is the rule of never miss twice. Missing once is an accident. Missing twice is the start of a new habit. The first mistake never ruins you. It is the spiral of repeated mistakes that follows. If you miss your habit on Monday, your only job is to do it on Tuesday. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to happen. The people who look like they have superhuman discipline are not people who never fail. They are simply people who have a faster recovery time. They don't let a slip turn into a slide, and as we refine these systems, as we recover from our stumbles, we can use visual tools to keep us on the path. We talked about habit tracking, but let me tell you the story of the paper clip strategy. There was a rookie stockbroker in the 1990s who wanted to become successful. The environment was competitive, and he was a nobody, but he had a secret weapon. On his desk, he had 2 jars. One was filled with 120 paper clips. The other was empty. Every morning, he would start with the full jar. His goal was to make sales calls. Every time he dialed the phone and spoke to a prospect, he would move 1 paperclip from the full jar to the empty jar. He told himself, I am not going home until the first jar is empty. He didn't focus on the money. He didn't focus on the rejections. He focused on moving the paperclips. Within 18 months, that rookie stockbroker had brought in $5 million to the firm. By age 24, he was earning $75,000 a year in the 1990s. Why did this work? Because it made the progress visual and tactile. We are visual creatures. We need to see that we are moving forward. When you are writing a book, you can't see the progress of the final product. But if you move a marble from one jar to another for every page you write, you can see the accumulation of your effort. It turns the invisible into the visible. Find your paperclips. Find your X on the calendar. Give your brain the visual proof it craves. But as we near the end of this philosophy, we must address a danger that arises only for the successful. It is the danger of complacency. Habits create the foundation for mastery, but they are not mastery itself. The formula we discussed earlier, habits plus deliberate practice equal to mastery, is the only way to avoid the trap of good enough. When you first learn to drive, you are hyper-aware. You are learning. But after 10 years, you drive unconsciously. You are not getting better at driving. You are just reinforcing your current level of skill. To become great, you must remain conscious. You must review and reflect. Top performers have a system for reflection. Athletes watch game tape. Writers read their old journals. Executives do quarterly reviews. You need to create a ritual. Maybe every Sunday, maybe every month, where you look at your habits and ask, is this still working? Am I just going through the motions? How can I tweak this to be 1% better? Without reflection, a habit becomes a rut. With reflection, a habit becomes a ladder. So where does this leave us? We have traveled from the microscopic biology of the brain to the sociology of the tribe. We have looked at the 1% rule, the 4 laws, the environment, and the identity. We have realized that change is not a lightning strike, but a slow sunrise. Let's bring it back to the core metaphor, the title that started it all, Atomic Habits. I want you to hold the 2 meanings of this word atomic in your mind. First, atomic means tiny, small, elemental, the basic building block of matter. A single atom is so small, it is invisible to the naked eye. It seems powerless on its own. This is your 5-minute workout. This is your 1 glass of water. This is your 1 sentence written. It feels invisible. It feels like it doesn't matter. But remember the second meaning. Atomic means the source of immense, explosive power. When atoms align, when they chain react, they release energy that can level cities or power nations. Your habits are the same. A single habit is an atom, but a system of habits aligned in the same direction, compounded over time, creates a force that is unstoppable. The trajectory of your life bends in the direction of your habits. Every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. No single instance will transform your beliefs But as the votes build up, so does the evidence of your new identity. This is the ultimate purpose of habits. It is not just about getting a better body, or a bigger bank account, or a clean house. It is about believing in yourself. It is about looking in the mirror and trusting the person looking back at you. It is about knowing that you are the architect of your own character. You do not need to be a victim of your environment. You can design it. You do not need to be a slave to your impulses. You can hack them. You do not need to rely on motivation. You can build a system. And the most beautiful part, you can start right now. You don't need to wait for Monday. You don't need to wait for the new year. You don't need to wait for motivation to strike like lightning. Motivation is not the cause of action. Motivation is the result of action. The heavy lifting is done by the system, not by your willpower. So here is your invitation. Pick one small thing, one atomic thing. Maybe it's putting your running shoes by the door. Maybe it's reading one page of a book. Maybe it's drinking a glass of water before your coffee. Make it obvious. Make it attractive. Make it easy. Make it satisfying. Do not worry about the mountain. Do not worry about the finish line. Do not worry about the person you haven't become yet. Just focus on the next step. Focus on being 1% better today than you were yesterday. Because if you can do that, if you can just be 1% better, then time is your ally. Then the math is on your side. Then the Sorite's paradox works for you, not against you. Then the stone will split. The world belongs to those who show up. The world belongs to those who understand the power of the small. Your potential is not a fixed point. It is a limit you can approach infinitely through the power of habit. The atoms are waiting. The chain reaction is yours to start. Go. Make your move. And never, ever underestimate the power of starting small.